Recently, Barack Obama urged citizens to be prepared. He broke this new ground in a May 31st speech to the FEMA National Response Coordination Center in Washington. He explained that it was up to each citizen to be prepared for disasters. This preparation should extend to having an evacuation plan and having a fully stocked disaster supply kit. He said, "One of the things that we have learned over the course of the last 7.5 years is that government plays a vital role, but it is every citizen's responsibility to be prepared for a disaster." Ignore the propaganda where he says the government has played a vital role. It has played a role along with the Federal Reserve in causing the current state of affairs, but Obama promoting prepping is certainly a change. Both the FBI and Homeland Security have seen prepping as a sign of incipient terrorism, as a matter of policy. In fact, you can get investigated if the federal government notices signs of unusual prepping in your house. But now Obama appears to be warning people to prepare for something. When the US Fed Gov, responsible for so much ruin in the world, begins warning of disasters, it is probably advisable to pay attention. Governments love disasters of any kind and often encourage them because of the opportunity to extend control, raise taxes, and expand bureaucracy. For instance, the hurricane season just started. Is he talking about a New Orleans-type hurricane disaster? Sadly, quite a bit of evidence has come out that the New Orleans levees were sabotaged by the feds themselves, and the FEMA response was awful. At the very least, it was a failure by the government in both installing the levees and not making them adequate to withstand a large hurricane of the kind that commonly hits in that area. There are plenty of other kinds of disasters that the federal government might be able to take advantage of. The Seattle Times recently reported on a federal government rehearsal for a megaquake plus tsunami. A massive earthquake and tsunami readiness drill has been developed by the US government, the military, and state and local emergency managers over the past few years to test their readiness for what, when it strikes, will likely be the nation's worst natural calamity. The June 7th to 10th exercise is called Cascadia Rising. It's named after the Cascadia Subduction Zone, a 600-mile-long fault just off the coast that runs from Northern California to British Columbia. "This is the largest exercise ever for a Cascadia break," said Lieutenant Colonel Clayton Braun of the Washington State National Guard. Braun has been a key planner of the Doomsday Drill, which is being overseen by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And ActivistPost.com recently reported on ways U.S. law enforcement was preparing for civil disturbances. A new report from analysts with industry research group Sandler Research forecasts the global riot control system market for the next 4 years. Sandler predicts the market will have an annual growth of 3.5%. Various U.S. law enforcement agencies have been gearing up for the virtually inevitable unrest both during and following those elections. Militarized police forces have become de rigueur, even in the nation's smallest towns. Civil disturbances can happen in many ways. Weather disasters can spark major chaos, but so can economic catastrophes. We've been watching for and speculating on what could set off the coming crisis, and have previously suggested that Deutsche Bank might be the 2016 version of Lehman Brothers. For years, the bank has flirted with bankruptcy, and reports are that fiscal insolvency is getting closer. The bank was recently downgraded by Moody's amidst reports that its derivatives exposure was in the area of $75 trillion. On Friday evening, its ATMs stopped issuing money, though that was supposedly due to a technological malfunction. As of the time of this video, they're still not issuing cash. Deutsche Bank says the problem will be fixed by Monday. We'll be watching to see if it is. What's interesting about the timing of the supposed malfunction was that it occurred on a Friday evening. We know from past experience that when banks or central banks have problems, they usually announce it on a weekend. Given that the entire German economy is less than $4 trillion, Deutsche Bank's $75 trillion in derivative exposure is an unimaginable sum. If Deutsche Bank were to go under, we could see banks throughout the West seize up. It would be similar to 2008, but far worse, as the financial system would simply implode. Bank closures would lead to stock market closures, people's credit cards and bank cards would stop working. It would be pandemonium. In the US, EBT cards would also stop working, and we've seen how even a few-hour technical problem with EBT cards have started riots in some parts of the US. So what Barack Obama is referring to may involve hurricanes or earthquakes, but he could also be referring to economic disasters. Finally, and recently, there has been an upsurge of alternative news coverage of the so-called Western megadrought. While this has been reported on previously, the continuation of the drought and its results has led to speculation that the federal government wants to step in and force migrations out of California. If one believes this scenario, the government has in mind using the results of the drought to forcefully take over the food supply in the US. A near-term speculation is that the Obama administration has in mind distributing food through Walmart stores managed by FEMA. Jade Helm, under this theory, was part of the process for realigning resources to support government management. And Jade Helm continues to this day and throughout the summer, branded under its new name, the Unconventional Warfare Exercise 16, or UX-16, where sightings of massive tank and other heavy military equipment continue. The idea being sold is that melting of the ice in the North Pole due to historical solar fluctuation is resetting temperatures across the continent. Hotter temperatures in the West and Midwest are pushing rainfall north. The government has purposely blamed global warming and climate change for cyclical changes to solar radiation that occur regularly, according to geological studies. Obama in his speech even mentioned a FEMA app that provides direction to a FEMA camp near you. The FEMA app comes in either Spanish or English. Between Jade Helm and UX, trains traveling around the country laden with caskets, and now a FEMA app, it seems likely to us that something is being planned on a large scale. Obama hasn't warned about a disaster in the past, but he surely made up for it in this speech. Of course, as we know,
Majesty Queen Elizabeth. The report says the following. Queen Elizabeth stunned BBC production staff yesterday while preparing to deliver the Queen's speech at the state opening of Parliament, hinting that she is planning to abdicate the throne and flee the United Kingdom, a BBC insider claims. Quote, "One is making the necessary preparations to abandon ship," Her Majesty said. "A violent storm is coming, the likes of which Britain has never seen." Her Majesty was speaking to her advisers while taking on the Parliament robe of state and the imperial state crown in the robing chamber. However, she was already wearing a microphone and her comments were heard by the whole gallery. She seemed angry that she had to remain neutral in her speech. She said there is solid intelligence from military top brass that if we don't Brexit, there is an inevitable World War III scenario that will play out, the insider said. World War II will seem like a bump in the road compared to this. I must warn my subjects, the Queen said. The line was cut off at this point, and BBC production staff were urgently addressed by the director, John Kirby. He said he had been warned by BBC executives that the head of state had been shooting her mouth off a lot lately, and that we must all ignore, forget, delete from our memories everything that we have heard from her. By warning advisers that she has made the necessary preparations to flee the country, is she hinting that she has inside information of the darkest kind? Now, the following model, which we're going to show to you here in just a second, was created by the NWS Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, also referred to as PTWC. It's based off of modeling from an earthquake that hit the area on January the 27th of the year 1700, approximately 315 years ago, which caused a massive tsunami that actually struck the coast of Japan. So traveled for thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean. Now, officials are planning for a disaster unlike anything we've ever seen. The response will include the deployment of civilian and military personnel and will exceed anything we've ever had to respond to as a country. So think about that for a minute. Anything we've ever had to respond to as a country. What in the world could cause such a response by our government? So the response will be orders of magnitude larger than Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy. Now, this is according to Lieutenant Colonel Clayton Braun, who's with the Washington State Army National Guard. So here we have an immediate call to action from state and federal agencies that indicates there is an imminent threat to both life and infrastructure as a result of the instability of the region. But one thing's missing here. They fail to indicate in the report as to the rush to action here. Why is it so important that this be conducted at this time? What is the significance of conducting the exercise now, as opposed to, let's say, last year or the year before, or 5 years ago, or for that matter, 2 years from now? What is so important about this date? What is it that they seem to know that the rest of us aren't aware of or aren't being told about? Is it possible that they are preparing for what is coming our way from the dark regions of space?